So we all know the general gist of premium mid-size crossover SUVs. They're the best-selling cars of their respective brands, and they make them the most money. So it's important that these companies are doing well with them. I have been a Volvo owner myself for around about 6 months, and I have to say I do really like my own, despite the fact that it's old and leaks, and is currently at the dealership right now getting an airbag recall service and a full inspection. Video on that will be coming out soon.
The vehicle is severely leaking. This is me wiping it up a few times already.
Thankfully, the nice people at Ken Garff Volvo in Salt Lake City have allowed me to take this loaner car, which is 20 times as expensive as my S80 that I lent them, so it doesn't really seem like a fair trade. This is a 2023 Volvo XC60 B6 all-wheel drive Ultimate with the Polestar engineered package. More information on what all of that means in a bit. The closest car that I can compare this to is the BMW X3, which I have reviewed before. Video in the description. You should go check it out. It is a little bit less expensive, but it's also older. This generation, the second generation of the Volvo XC60, dropped in 2017, 6 years since this generation came out. But honestly, driving it, it still feels pretty new inside and out. In my opinion, my humble opinion, this is the best looking car in its segment. And I gotta say, if I was going for a crossover from a premium brand myself, I would go after something that's a little bit more elegant and simplistic looking, like this one right here. This color is Silver Dawn, and one complaint that I do have about the XC60 is that the color choices are a bit too 2010 Germany, if you know what I'm saying. It's basically just shades. There's a dark blue, which isn't all that exciting. There's a red that looks kind of lame. Not a lot of color choices on this thing. The trim levels are a bit confusing. There's, at least in the United States, there's the B5 front-wheel drive, the B5 all-wheel drive, which is a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. What a surprise. And then there's the B6 and the B6 all-wheel drive, which is what this is. That has a 2-liter turbocharged and supercharged 4-cylinder engine underneath the hood here. There's also a couple recharge plug-in hybrid variants, and the top of the line is the T8 Recharge, which has 455 horsepower, which who looks at an XC60 and thinks, yeah, that probably has almost 500 horsepower? It's a bit of a shock, don't you think? Volvo has a habit of making cars that look really lame and sleepy and slow, and then you find out that they actually have 400, 500 horsepower underneath the hood. That seems to be their thing nowadays, which I definitely respect a lot. First thing I have to say, when I pop the hood on this thing, look at the angle that this hood opens up, almost like those old Mercedes-Benz where they had that service position on the hood where it opened completely vertically. That is interesting. If you're a short person and you're trying to close the hood, it'll be a lot more difficult for you. Also, maybe I'm just used to crappy old cars with blown struts on the hood or no struts at all, but these hood struts are ridiculously strong. It just flies, the hood just flies open on you in a sort of surprising way. And shutting it can be kind of hard. It's a good little workout. You know, I need to work out my triceps a little bit, so I'm gonna do 15 reps of closing the hood on a Volvo XC60. Who needs the gym when you have one of these cars? Only $62,000 for this one, and it comes with a free workout machine. Jokes aside, this is a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine with a turbocharger and a supercharger. That's the difference, as far as I could tell, between the B5 and the B6. The B5 just has a measly turbocharger for 250 horsepower. What a joke. Or you could have a turbocharger and a supercharger in the B6, which I don't really know what Volvo's trim packages mean, B5 versus B6. Maybe it's one higher because it has one more form of aspiration than the B5, but that would imply that the B5 has 5. Wait. The B5 has 4 cylinders, right? All taking in air, plus 1 turbocharger, which means there are 5 ways that air enters the engine on a B5. Then you add a supercharger, you get the B6. Okay, that makes sense. Oh wait, there's the T8, which is a hybrid. It doesn't make sense, actually. There's really nothing special underneath this engine bay. You look at this engine cover and you think that it's plastic, but see how it's soft and it bends and it deforms and stuff? I have heard that that is for pedestrian protection. If you try to run somebody down in your Volvo because you have your Mustang at the dealership for some reason, they give you a Volvo loaner and your old habits show through and you have to run over a crowd, then it's not really gonna hurt them. Unless the metal hood that goes on top does hurt them. Would Ken Garff Volvo be mad if I tested that? Yeah, that doesn't hurt at all. So that's a good safety feature. Again, it's B6, which means, I forgot to mention, that it has 300 horsepower and it's Polestar engineered, which means it's a little bit more sporty. Let's check trunk space here, practicality. And I would say, got a bunch of my crap back here. This trunk space isn't quite as good or big as in the BMW X3, but it's good enough for most people. If there isn't enough room back here, you can fold down the rear seats like that, but you can only do it from a lever on the seat. They could at least put latches back here that would release the seat. That would make more sense considering the car's $60,000 price point. They start at $47,000, but this one is $62,000 thereabouts. The fact that you have to walk around to each individual side of the car to drop the seats if you can't reach can be a little bit annoying, especially considering how much money you've paid for this thing. If you need to though, there is a little ski pass-through you can put your skis through, or some long object if you still need to have 2 passengers on either side. So that's a nice little thing, and it's pretty easy to use. But overall back here, other than little storage net divider area right here and cigarette style charging outlet inside of it, there isn't really anything interesting back here. The tailgate is electrically operated, which is nice. And also, it has this button with a lock icon on it that, let me make sure I have the key before I do this. When you press it, it'll close the tailgate and lock the car. So you don't have to be bothered with doing 2 things. You can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, if you will, which is nice. Now it's important to note that I am 6'3" tall man, and for a car of this size, it's about what you'd expect. I think the BMW X3 has a little bit more legroom, but it's a very minuscule amount still. And the way the seat is shaped means that the seat almost avoids touching your legs, but not quite good enough. You still have plenty of foot room, which is nice, and plenty of headroom. Well, actually, nah. You have headroom, but not a super big amount. People over, let's say, 6'5" or 6 will find it pretty uncomfortable back here. We've got a little armrest right here, cup holders, which up until yesterday weren't working properly. Also, I'm not sure how much I would trust these little tab things. It looks a little bit too open. Up here, there is a climate control system. It's not as good as what you'd find in the back of a BMW X3 if you can get one back there, but it's nice to have. Also, heated rear seats, which is another nice thing to have. Grab handles for all 4 of the main passengers, which is good. Even the driver gets a grab handle, which I really like. In terms of materials back here, that's soft touch plastic, which doesn't feel very good, but it's okay, I guess. Again, this is an older car. It's 6 years old at this point, so we can't bash it too much for interior quality when we're comparing it to what our expectations are for brand new cars. But it's worth noting, from what you demand from a car of this segment, you'll be completely fine with what you get back here. Up front here, and despite the fact that this car has a dated interior, it's still really nice up here. Nice and simplistic, which is a modern car thing. Lots of new cars are going for a more simplistic interior. That always comes with the caveat of, well, it's got some stupid climate sub-menu BS that's going to be annoying to deal with. In this car, it's not too bad. It's not as intuitive or easy to understand as regular buttons would be, but it means that it's a much more simplistic flush look up here. Let's be honest, if you can't figure out how this climate system works up here in just a couple minutes, then you might be an idiot. This infotainment system has this whole Google tie-in, so it uses Google Maps, which is good. I generally trust Google Maps more than anything else when I'm trying to get myself somewhere. It's really nice and quick to respond to your touch. The screen is getting pretty small by modern car standards, but I think it's easily good enough. This car does have Apple CarPlay, but it's wired. You should hope they have a Lightning to USB-C cord. I can't find mine, so we can't test it. There's an air quality application which measures the air quality of the inside of your car, which is nice. I mean, if you're scared about the quality of the air in your car, if you're one of those people that drives around on their own with a COVID face mask on, then that'll be good for you. I think that is oh, it's raining. So overall, this infotainment system, it doesn't look that great. It's nice that it has the Google tie-in, so if you're used to Android phones and things like that, it shouldn't be that hard to get used to. You even have the Google Play Store on here and Google Assistant, which is cool. In terms of everything else, I also have a digital gauge cluster up here with a map in between the gauges, which is really nice because, especially for me, if I'm coming up to a turn, I don't want to use navigation, but I'm not 100% sure if it's the right turn. I can just look at the map and that usually confirms it for me. Also, you can hide the map up here, turn the sound off so people think that you're some sort of wizard and you know where to go no matter what the destination is. People find the fact that you never need directions very impressive, but you're a fraud because you have maps right here in the gauge cluster, which is nice. And again, it is an old interior, but it's a really nice interior, so I can't complain about it at all. The materials are nice. This leather wrapped steering wheel feels great. The dashboard feels nice. This is the ultimate XC90, that's the trim level, and it comes with Harman Kardon stereo equipment, which is cool, and it sounds really good. Again, there is soft touch plastic on the door, which I don't really like very much. It feels a little cheap, but everywhere else it feels nice. This wood right here feels really, really good, and it looks really good. You can have a whole flush look up here, or you can pull it back for cup holders and things. I like this gear lever here, which actually glows at night, which is pretty stupid and tacky, but it's kind of fun and I like it. I've got this huge panoramic moonroof thing. It doesn't open, but this shield here does, and the way you do it is you just swipe your finger. If you want to stop it, you just tap, and then you can bring it back. It's pretty easy to understand. The whole swiping finger thing, I'm not really a fan. I always prefer buttons, but it works, so can't complain too much. This car also has radar guided cruise control, lane keep assist, all the good modern car stuff that you would want. And again, 300 horsepower. So I think it's time that we take this car on the road and see how it drives. I'm about to drive the 2023 Volvo XC60 B6 Ultimate all-wheel drive, engineered by Polestar or whatever. To start the engine, I twist the engine start-stop button. I don't push it, twist it. All right, when you start the engine with your seatbelt off, I imagine, it makes this, actually never mind, who cares? All right, so electronic parking brake disengaged. I do really like this little shifter here because it's not some stupid nub thing. You still actually have some hand action to make it work. Pull it towards you for a drive, push it away for reverse. It's easy to understand, and when you shift it into gear, it still feels like you're actually doing something, which I like. Looking ahead, I have a heads-up display, but it doesn't really do much other than tell me my speed. Doesn't say what unit the speed is in, it just, I suppose it just trusts you to know it. And it has the speed limit right next to it. It also shows me the speed limit in the gauge cluster too, underneath my speed. It gets it right when you're driving through school zones. It always tells you that you're driving in a school zone, never gets that wrong. But everywhere else, it's not completely accurate. I wouldn't 100% focus on that. I would look outside at the actual signs like a normal human being would. I'm going to turn my cooled seat on because, of course, this is the ultimate XC60, the top of the line model. It's the top of the line regular gasoline trim, but if you are willing to go hybrid, then you can get the T8 with 450 horsepower. I also have auto start stop, which turned off the engine. I don't know how to turn that off, but what it does pretty well is that it start the engine without you really noticing, but there is a bit of a delay when you get off the gas before the engine actually starts. So it's smoother than a lot of auto start stop systems, but I'd still generally prefer to turn it off because it takes a little bit of getting used to and is a little bit annoying. The digital gauge cluster is really fantastic. It's beautiful and crisp looking. I love having the map in the middle there and easy to read. You can complain all you want about how the tachometer goes the wrong way. I don't generally think that's a big deal, but some people do. And it's interesting because it goes up to 8 or 130, whatever the maximum number is, and then it sort of fades away, almost as if you need to unlock more speed out of it. So if you drive it, you do some challenge thing on it, like it's a video game, and then maybe you'll unlock the gauge cluster going up to 160. The Polestar engineered package adds better throttle response, quicker gear changes, tiny bit more power, and a sport suspension, which yes, handles really well. This car handles too well for its own right. I think for being a tall crossover, it doesn't need to handle this well. It takes turns with an elegance that cars that are lower and wider than it can't match, and I find that to be pretty impressive. Problem with that is the ride quality is utter garbage in this thing. So I have it in comfort mode right now, and you still feel every single bump. It's not really that well muffled when it goes into the cabin, shakes you around a little bit. So if I were buying an XC60, I would skip the whole sport suspension thing, because honestly, who demands that their XC60 handles really well? I certainly wouldn't. You buy a car like this to drive it every day, and it should be comfortable, and it's not. 300 horsepower, turbocharged and supercharged, and it leaves regular cars for dead, this thing. It's really quick. Mild hybrid system, so it recharges a 48 volt battery as you're slowing down, and I assume that it can use that to make the car go a little bit harder, because it feels, from a stop, it accelerates a lot better than the mid-range. It gets a little bit weak. And when you're accelerating, it's interesting because it feels like it goes a lot harder in second gear than it does in first. So you're trying to get it up to a regular traffic speed, shifts into second, and then it throws you back in your seat a little bit, which I find to be a bit weird in a good way. It's a really fun car to drive, especially for the segment that it's in. And it's an automatic transmission, just a regular automatic. You feel the downshifts when you're slowing to a stop a lot more than I would like. It makes you pivot back and forth a little bit. You can really feel each downshift as it goes. It's not as smooth as it should be. The upshifts when you're driving normally are completely fine, and like a good automatic should, it blends the gears together so that you don't really notice it. This car also does have a manual mode, but there's no point in me trying that. On upshifting, it blends the gears together very well so that you don't notice it, but downshifting, slowing up to a light, you definitely do notice it, and I find it to be a little annoying. Driving this does definitely make me want to try a T8 recharge with that 450 horsepower hybrid powertrain, because in this is basically the mid-range engine, and it feels quick, like surprisingly quick, more than you'd expect. It's not quite a fair comparison between this and the X3 that I drove, because this is higher up. This is more equivalent, I would say, almost to an X3 M40i, not quite. It bridges the lines between the X3 30i and the M40i in terms of performance. In terms of sound and things like that, well, when you're driving it in comfort mode, it's quiet and relaxing, except for the terrible ride. Full Power mode definitely makes it a little bit more lively doesn't change the sound very much, but it quickens the shifts, makes it sportier. In terms of engine noise and things like that, it's not annoying or loud or buzzy or anything, but it doesn't sound that good either. It's a little bit raspy, like a lot of cars in its segment are. But it's a smooth engine, it's a powerful engine, and overall I really love the way this car drives. It's just the fact that this suspension is so harsh that would keep me away from the Polestar engineered package or any sports suspension option that you could find on an XC60. If you're thinking of buying one of these things, unless you're taking it on mountain roads every day or taking it to an autocross or a track day, which nobody's gonna do, just don't go for a sports suspension. My old S80 has really soft, comfy, pillowy seats, which are still well bolstered, well designed, and that's sort of what I was expecting for this car. The seats feel a little bit flat and firm. I think long road trips might be a problem in this because you could feel yourself getting a little bit sore, I imagine. They still feel well designed and safe and all that stuff, but I think they should be a little bit softer in this car. Here we're coming up to a bit of a uphill stretch. Again, we can feel the acceleration. Let's put it back into Polestar mode, which optimizes acceleration and gear shift response for a sportier and more dynamic driving experience, and it also turns off the auto stop start. There's also an off-road mode, which I'm not going to bother trying because we're not taking it off-road. And the Hyundai Hybrid just cut me off. And there's a Subaru with a fart can. But driving past this Subaru WRX here, it's pretty funny to know that despite the fact that his car has no muffler and is loud and looks sporty and fast, I know that I could easily match his level of performance and speed if I needed to get past him. And just thinking about that and how that would make him feel as I pass him, pretty funny. Especially considering the fact that this isn't even the top of the line XC60. I would really love to take this thing on a canyon road too, just to see how well it actually handles. But I can tell you, it handles a lot better than what you'd expect for a car of this type. But I think that's gonna do it for me on this video. So I wanna thank everybody for watching, and I hope everybody has a good day. Bye-bye.